Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, lovely ladies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted, episode 60. I am your host, Anna Osborne, and I am so excited to be here with all of you guys on this beautiful month of June. It is summertime. My kids are almost out of school, which is crazy to me. I can't believe they're starting kindergarten in the fall, but I'm not going to freak out, I promise. Although I cannot guarantee as we get closer to them actually starting kindergarten in August, my freak out might occur. So just give you guys a heads up there. But yeah, we've got a couple weeks left of school. They get out late June, and we are officially done with preschool and diving into summer break, which is really short for them. It's kind of crazy. They go through to preschool through the Parks and Rec department. So they just go by the month. And so they don't get out till the last week of June. So all the schools in our area got out the very end of May. And so my kids are like, why are all our friends out of school? Because they've got friends that are a year or so older. So they're trudging through. I mean, good Lord, it's 3 hours, 3 days a week. They can battle through to the end of the month. So we've got a fun family vacation planned next week, actually. And I'm excited to go to the coast and spend a little bit of time and duck out of work, and they're going to duck out of school for a day, and it's just going to be fantastic. So I'm excited to be here with all of you guys. And as you all know, we are spending the month of June celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Her Life Unscripted podcast, which is so exciting to me. I can't believe it's been a year. It's one of those projects, you know, where it feels like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been a year. It's gone by so fast, combined with, holy smokes, it's been a year. It's been a lot of work. And so it's always that funny kind of juxtaposition between those two things. So we are here at our year mark this month and just spending the month kind of reflecting on the things that I've learned and really using it as a way for you guys to be able to spend a little time kind of looking back at your last year, or if you are New Year's resolution folks, looking back at your last 6 months. So last week, we really talked about this idea of this ripple effect, and what I've so experienced with getting to know all of you and the folks that have been so gracious enough to be on the podcast and be interviewed is this idea of just this lightness in the world and this ripple effect of everybody doing amazing things, and that it just is so fantastic to see that even if our corner of the world can feel very isolated, or that we're in the monotony of the day-to-day, that we have this amazing opportunity to reach out and just create connection, whether it's through our work, our day-to-day interactions, calling a friend, slowing down and having a cup of coffee with them, just these things that really create this amazing, amazing brightness in the world. So that was last week. I really encourage you guys to go back and listen to that episode because it is a good one and just really helps encapsulate what I have really gained from this experience. And today we are doing a little bit more of the same. I'm sharing another episode or another lesson I have learned in the last year of podcasting, and I'm excited to dive in with all of you guys on that. And I would say the another lesson that I have learned is how hard podcasting is. It is definitely a grind sometimes in terms of wanting to be very, very consistent with a weekly episode, and never a grind in a bad way like, oh gosh, I've got to go record an episode, because I really, really love that. But all the other parts of it, the editing, the sharing on social media, those sorts of things, it is an interesting thing because I am not so great at asking for help and I'm not so great at self-promotion of, hey, look at me doing this over here. And so part of podcasting is you have to ask for help because, you know, we are not all multi-talented to be able to do everything ourselves, but also that if you're creating a podcast and you're not sharing it with anybody, you don't get the opportunity to create connections and really build an audience, but also build a community that is really vibing with what you're sharing. And so those two things have felt hard at times. What I have done as of last November, I believe it is I handed off all of the editing to a podcast editing company. And that has been an absolute godsend in terms of being able to record the episode and hand off about 94% of the rest of it. There's still a few little things I do, like creating imagery and sharing on social media and those sorts of things. But that piece of being able to ask for help was really vulnerable because it's not my usual go-to, right? But the other thing too is this idea of kind of self-promotion, right? It feels so vulnerable. And I think that when I say that, podcasting is hard, what I'm really saying is podcasting is vulnerable, right? Because I'm sharing you the ways that I see the world. I'm connecting with guests that I feel like could really enhance our community. I'm talking about ideas that I feel are important, but it's really vulnerable putting it out in the world and then thinking, well, is anybody else going to think this has value? Right? And then I'm going to go and share the episode and say, hey, listen, you'll love it. Like it's really freaking vulnerable. And so that's what I mean when I say that it's hard. I remember when I first pressed publish on the first episodes of Her Life Unscripted, I didn't sleep that night. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so odd because here I've been working behind the scenes for months, getting everything planned and recording episodes and really just making sure that everything would go seamlessly because, you never know what it's going to go like. And even with the best of intentions, you can still have errors and bloopers and whatnot. And I thought that once I pressed published and it was out there, that I would be so relieved that I would sleep like a little baby. But then I realized that babies don't sleep well. They're restless when they wake up. And that's exactly how I slept. And it was because it was so vulnerable, saying, here is this part of me and how will it be received? And also removing myself from feeling successful with this podcast, not whether or not people criticize it, right? Because people can, they're entitled to do that, right? But whether or not I actually continued doing it, if I was consistent with it, if I continued to dig deeper and be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more authentic, let you into my world a little bit more, that's where I feel like I've really pushed myself to determine or to measure my success is what it's done for me, not whether or not somebody says, you know what, you suck, you should stop, or whether or not somebody says, hey, you're great at this. Like that feels so good, of course. But if I'm just doing this in order to receive positive feedback, then I'm missing the mark of what this journey is really about. Because what this past year has taught me is that I can stay in a space of vulnerability and maintain it for much longer than I probably would have realized, or that I wouldn't say probably, I would say much longer than I realized in life. Actually, was just talking with a friend earlier today, and I was talking about my daughter, and my daughter is this beautiful soul. She is smart, and she's so curious, and she has this very, very confident exterior. Actually, there's a gal that leads the children's ministry at our church, and she told me the other day that when she grows up, she wants to be like my daughter, my little 5-year-old daughter, because my daughter is just so confident and curious and smart. And I look at her and I think, oh, baby girl, you are so curious and you are so smart and you are so courageous. And I know that she will go through a similar journey that I did, which was learning how to let people in, right? I was a smart kid and a very curious kid, and I got to use that as my defense mechanisms. I got to use it as a way to not be so vulnerable because I was kind of sharp and I was kind of witty, right? And it's only over the years that I have become much more comfortable in my vulnerability of letting people know that I don't have all the answers, that I can't do it all myself, that I am not perfect. And some of you may be listening to this and laugh and think, well, of course we know you're not perfect, or of course no one's perfect. But that was a very individual journey for me. For whatever reason, I felt, probably because I got lots of affirmations from other people when I did things well, that I had to keep doing that in order to be liked, rather than saying, you know what, I can't do this, or I don't have the answers, or I don't know. I know, gosh, this is such a funny story, but I remember one of my first jobs in high school, I worked in an office for a produce company, and I grew up in a farming town. So working for a produce company was totally, lots of people work as a bagger at Safeway or do babysitting. Like it was kind of the same thing in my town to work for an ag company. And so I worked in their office and just did different clerical work. I think I was in my junior year of high school when I started working there. Anyways, I was working there and I worked in the accounts payable. I worked in all the departments, but I was helping stuff envelopes of all the bills to be sent out to all the different ag companies because we were a supplier. And so I remember stuffing all the envelopes and having them all ready to go. They just needed to be closed, sealed, and stamped, sealed, and delivered, right? Signed, sealed, and delivered. And I remember telling the gal, like, okay, I've got them all stuffed. What do I do next? And she said, well, do you know how to use the mailing machine? And this is a perfect example of my personality. Yes, I know how to use it. Had I ever used a mailing machine before? Absolutely not. But here I was, this very confident 16-year-old, right? Saying, yeah, I know how to use it. And so what did I do with literally, this is just one day's of payables that was going to go out into the world. What did I do? I went ahead and I licked probably 200 envelopes because I did not stop to ask how to use the mailing machine, right? And so what I needed to do was put all these envelopes in the mailing machine and it would self-seal them and it would stamp them, okay? But I didn't ask. I told this woman that I knew how to do it. I mean, oh my gosh, I think back to that and that's crazy. But I didn't do vulnerable. Like I didn't do I don't know. And so I said that I knew how to do it. I licked all 200 plus of those envelopes. I mean, even just the taste now, 20 years later of licking an envelope, thankfully they have the sticky stuff now. I mean, it just grosses me out. And so I licked every single one. And then I figured out, I don't even know how I figured out, but I figured out how to put those things through the mailing machine so that they could get stamped. And all of them came out with this little bit of like wet on the back. And then I thought, why is it so wet on the back? Well, it's because I put those stupid things through sealed. And if I put them through open, what would have happened is that that little bit of water would have been on where it needed to go to moisten the envelope, and then it would have sealed it for me. And so I worked for them, for a couple years, and then I'd come back from summers for college and help out with projects. So I probably worked there for about 4 years. And I remember that it became this running joke because, of course, I don't know how somebody found out what I did, and they kind of teased and circulated that I just went ahead and licked all of them, right? And so it became this joke. And I realized and look back now that I was so in the habit of just saying, yes, I can do it, that I never let myself be vulnerable and say, no, I need help. And so now here I am at the ripe old age of 37, and I am learning to embrace asking for help. And for knowing that my vulnerability is one of my greatest strengths and that I can step into that place and be totally okay. The rest of the world will continue to spin if Anna says she doesn't know how to do something and she asks for help. And part of this podcasting journey has allowed me this last year to own and honor that vulnerability. And that when I press publish on every single episode, I get this wave throughout my body of vulnerability, right? I now know what it is. Before it was panic. Now I can authentically name it as what it is, which is vulnerability. And I get this wave of that. And I still press publish because even though it's scary to be vulnerable, I know that I'll be okay, that I still can receive unconditional acceptance and love from those people around me when I'm vulnerable, and that I don't have to be perfect. And that when things are really, really hard, I can ask for help. And I'm proud of myself, and I'm proud of all of you that are embracing your vulnerable quota, right? Your threshold of vulnerability. I have learned so much from Brené Brown's work, and I know I've included a lot of it in here. But being able to stay in that place, to stay in the arena and to get hurt and still show up has been one of the most beautiful things that I have started to do in my life. And I would say probably in the last maybe 5 years, 6 years is something that I've really been able to do more and more. And really, I hope that I model that to my daughter because she is a brave, courageous, smart girl. And I hope that she knows she doesn't have to be perfect to be loved and that she can do hard things and ask for help. She doesn't have to do hard things in isolation because she feels like she has to be perfect. And my hope is the same for all of you, that you know that you are unconditionally loved and that when you do hard things and you feel really vulnerable, that you do them anyway. And that over time, as you walk this path of vulnerability and strength, that you realize the two things go hand in hand and that you can dive a little bit deeper and tolerate a little bit longer before you have to come up for air. And that when you come up from air, that it looks much more like asking for support versus putting your walls back up and putting up your defense mechanisms. That really is my hope. I want to know, what's it like when you move into vulnerability, into that being seen? And I would love to hear about your path on that journey or your walk on that journey. I know for me that it is a journey that I am just inching along. By no means am I evolved to a place of saying I am perfect with it, because I reject ideas of perfectionism, and I am excited to continue to walk and learn how to be more and more vulnerable, because it is a really, really amazing thing. So that is my wish for all of you, that as I learn this lesson and I walk this path, that you will walk it along with me. And if it's something that you feel like you have just been mastering for so many years, please reach out and share that, especially via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at Her Life Unscripted. I would love to hear your guys' walk with that. And if you are so terrified to step into your vulnerability, I would love to hear that too, because I am on this journey, but by no means am I an expert at it. And I honestly hope that I never will be. I hope that I continue to challenge myself with it. And I'm just so grateful to this podcast and to all of you that you allow me to step into my vulnerability more consistently and allow me to stay there and not hide behind, some of the ways that I've hidden behind my vulnerability in the past. So thank you so much for allowing me into your worlds, into your hearts. And I do hope that those of you listening do reach out and check out the Shine Retreat for Women that Mari and I are hosting in September. It is going to be a beautiful, beautiful event, and we are so excited to have so many of you there. And we are definitely going to practice what it's like to be vulnerable and just stand in that a little bit longer than we may be doing initially, and get to experience all the beautiful blessings that come with it. So do head over to the shineretreatforwomen.com and check it out. We will be excited to have you all there. Thank you, ladies. Look forward to talking to you next week. Bye-bye.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.